In the last section, we spoke a little bit about the next application we're going to be working on. So we're going to make the entire backend for a type of Uber application or a type of ride-hailing application. We're going to put together the web server and the MongoDB database to serve it. So let's talk a little bit, just to make sure that's really clear, exactly how Uber works. So this is going to give us a little bit more insight into this drivers collection that I spoke about just a moment ago. Remember, the drivers collection is the collection of all the different people who are currently driving cars around in the world. So if you're not familiar with how Uber works, if you've never used Uber or Lyft or anything like that, it's relatively a pretty straightforward application. The user opens up the app on their device, their mobile device. They see a map of the world all around them, and then they can press a button that says Find a Driver. When the user presses Find a Driver, that looks at all of the different drivers who are in the world immediately around them. It finds a nearby driver, and then it prompts that driver to ask them whether or not they are currently available to go over to this user who's sitting right here at the corner of this road right here, pick them up and drive them to wherever they need to go. So again, we're not going to be so much concerned about the end user. We're only going to be working with this collection of drivers. We could definitely expand the application quite easily to include the concept of end users, but trust me, we're going to learn a ton and really just about all we need by just working with this collection of drivers. So again, we're kind of only building half the application here, but really believe me, you are going to learn so much, and this is all knowledge that you can immediately apply to the rest of the application if you wanted to build the entire thing out. So I want to take a second and think a little bit about this collection of drivers. I want to think about exactly what are the different operations that we might want to take on this collection of drivers. So we can imagine that we've got a drivers collection, and it's got driver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all these different people who are signed up to drive inside of our app. So what are the different ways in which we might modify this collection? Well, I bet you can guess. This really comes down to another CRUD style application. And again, you would not believe the number of apps in the world that are extremely popular that really come down to just being CRUD style applications. Now, of course, there's really fancy ways that you can work with all this data and throw a lot of complexity on top of it. But at the end of the day, there are 4 core operations for an app like Uber, to some degree, as far as the drivers go. All right, yeah, I'm going to throw that disclaimer on there. Yes, Uber is a very complicated app, but we can kind of model it as this little bit more simple, this simple structure. So when considering the collection of drivers, we might need to create a driver. So that would be the instance of where someone signs up to the application to be a driver. We might need to delete a driver. Yep, hey, maybe they are a really bad driver and we want to just totally kick them off the platform, totally shut them out 100%. We might want to delete the driver. Or maybe they request to be deleted. They don't want to be driving for the application anymore. We might need to edit a driver. So this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. It makes sense that not all of our drivers are going to be wanting to drive 24/7. Right? They're real people just like you and me. They don't want to be driving 24 hours a day. There might be times where they want to go home, take a break, do something else. And so in the context of that, maybe we need to have the ability to specify which drivers are currently active. To be able to toggle these drivers from active to inactive, well, that sounds a whole lot like editing a driver. Definitely sounds like editing one. Now finally, by far the most interesting operation we're going to need to take on this collection is to find drivers near a very particular user. Let's go back to our map here for a second. And let's say that you are standing right here at the corner of this intersection right here. And we've got 1 million active drivers across the entire world. If you request a driver while you're standing on this intersection right here, we only want to find drivers who are within a certain radius of your current location. We don't want to, if you're standing on the corner of this street right here, and this is in San Francisco in the US, we don't want to find some driver who's over in Bulgaria or Russia or some country in South America, Brazil, Argentina, Chile. We only want to find drivers who are within a very specific radius of the user's current location. And so this read operation is actually going to be pretty darn interesting, and we're going to have to really figure out a way in which we can make sure that we only specify drivers who are very close to a very particular physical location. Luckily, MongoDB has fantastic support for geo-based queries, and so towards the end of the section, when we implement this find drivers near me query, we're going to learn that that is something that's actually relatively straightforward when using MongoDB. Definitely a benefit of the platform. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about, and that's exactly, we just spoke about the drivers collection and how we have this big old pile of drivers, but now I want to think a little bit about how all these different operations are going to map up to API requests, okay? So let's take a quick break and then come back and talk about exactly how these operations are going to map up to particular types of requests inside of our application.